Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the top 5 things that I think you need to consider before leaving social work. Whether you're just kind of thinking about maybe leaving or you already have one foot out the door, these are some things that I wish I would have known or I would have at least thought about before making a complete career switch before leaving social work. The first thing that I think you need to consider before leaving social work is the identity crisis that you're probably gonna go through. I think a lot of people who are in helping professions really identify themselves with their profession. So if you are a social worker, I am a social worker, I am a nurse, I am a teacher, I am a cop. It is part of who I am and who I identify as a person. It is a big part of my life. So when you quit a profession like that, say if you quit social work but you go to another helping profession, like you quit social work but you're going to become a teacher, it's kind of easy to make that transition. Or maybe it's not, I don't know. I'm just assuming it's probably easier because you kind of have a new identity, if you will. But if you're quitting social work to do something completely unrelated, you kind of have to think about, okay, who am I now? Am I still a social worker at heart? When you talk to people about what you do, there's kind of that sense of pride that you would, at least for me, when you would talk about being a social worker, that you kind of can't identify with anymore. To say, I have my BSW or I have my MSW or I'm a licensed social worker or a licensed clinical social worker, whatever the case is, you kind of have to not necessarily let it go, but it's not going to be the same anymore once you aren't in the field anymore. And I also think that when you're talking to other people who are still in the field, you kind of feel a little, I don't know if left out is the right word, but you kind of feel a little different than when you were actually in it. So the first thing I would say is definitely the identity crisis. That's probably gonna come. I think going along with the identity crisis scenario is a feeling of guilt when you leave social work. I know when I left social work, I went through various stages. I mean, it still comes and goes where I feel guilty leaving. I feel guilty leaving the profession that I did, that I spent so much schooling on, that I spent so much time on, that I spent so much time considering that part of myself, and, it was a really good cause, and I don't know, all those things. You feel really guilty no longer being a part of that and being part of that really sacred, special group of people that do the kind of work that social workers do. You're no longer a part of that. So kind of be prepared for how you're going to deal with that guilt trip. And maybe you won't. Maybe you won't feel guilty at all. Maybe you'll just be like, sayonara, peace out. But I know for me, I felt kind of guilty, so that might be something to consider. Bottom line though, I think all in all, everyone has different reasons for leaving social work. Everyone goes into the social work field for different reasons. And if it's no longer making you happy for whatever reason, you shouldn't feel guilty for taking care of yourself and doing something else with your life. The second and third thing that I would say you need to consider before you leave social work, and I kind of put these two together because they kind of go hand in hand. The first being, when you leave social work, I would advise to make sure you take a true, authentic break, like a real break. But kind of going off of that, the third thing is, if for some reason in your heart you can't take a true break, there are other ways to be involved in social worky type causes, if you will, that don't have to deal with you being an actual social worker. And it's okay to get involved. For example, I used to be in CPS, Child Protective Services, and I remember when I was a CPS social worker, I would always say, I would love to be a CASA volunteer because I would no longer, have all of these kids on my caseload that I need to juggle and manage and get updates about the kids, about, from their foster parents, from the CASA volunteers, from their therapists, from any other providers, and I only see them, either once a month, twice a month, whenever I could, and not really get to know the kids that I was servicing. I mean, there were some kids that I was seeing on a weekly basis, just kind of depending on whatever the scenario was. But I remember thinking I would love to be involved in a way where I wasn't the one needing to make decisions and have all the pressure, but instead I could really make an impact and get to know, say, one child really, really well and like make a really big difference in one kid's life. And I remember saying, when I leave social work, I'm gonna be a CASA volunteer, or I'm gonna be a big sister, or something like that. And it's been just over a year now that I've been out of social work, and I still haven't done anything like that. And it's felt really nice. I still say I think at some point I am gonna do one of those things, but I have felt no rush to kind of have that back and have that world kind of back in my life, just because I feel good. I feel like I'm in a good place, and so maybe that's why now I probably could. But like when you are first getting out of social work, I highly suggest taking a good actual mental break from it. Like from whatever it is you're doing, completely separate yourself from it for at least, I don't know, 6 months, a year, a couple months, you know, whatever you need. But I think that would probably be best, I think. If the reason why you're leaving social work is why a lot of people do, is because you need that mental health break and you need that emotional break and all that. I mean, I think taking a good actual mental cleanse from it is probably the best way to go. But that's not to say eventually you can't have it be a part of your life. I mean, like I said, I think eventually I want to be a CASA volunteer or a big sister, or you can be a volunteer in something completely separate than, you know, the kind of work that you did. Maybe you were a CPS social worker, but you really want to get involved in hospitals and you want to volunteer at a hospital, or maybe you really want to work with veterans, or maybe you really want to work with the mental health population. I don't know, but don't silo yourself. Don't think that just because your background is from a certain expertise or a certain field that that means you're required to only do that. You know, spread your wings, do whatever you want. The fourth thing that I think everyone should consider if they're thinking about leaving social work, and for me, this is the biggest thing to consider. This is the one that I did not realize was going to be such a big deal until I quit. And that was the emotional availability and vulnerability that you're going to have once you leave social work. I explain it like this. I think we all become social workers for a reason. Even if you didn't necessarily have like a traumatic experience in your life, everyone has a calling for social work for some reason. Maybe you're just an all-around good person and you've never had anything bad happen to you and you just want to be a social worker. That's great. But I think majority of the social workers that I know have had something happen to them that kind of inspired them to become social workers. For me, I was adopted. I always wanted to work in adoption or with kids or with women and families. That was kind of my thing. For some people, it's different, you know, mental health stuff. So they want to be in mental health or veteran work, or I don't know, people all come to social work kind of with different stories kind of within them and different events that have happened to them that make them want to be involved in social work. And when that happens and you become a social worker, okay, you do the education, you do your field placements, you do your licensing, and you become a social worker, right? And through all of that, you're constantly on the go. You're studying, you have internships, you have work, you have classes, and then you start your career, and then you have clients, and you have your caseload. And probably all of your clients have a lot of emotional stuff that you are then dealing with, whether you're a LCSW and you're doing therapy, you're working with kids in CPS and families in CPS, you're working with veterans, you're doing hospital social work. You know, no matter what it is, even if you think that you are not emotionally involved in your work, you are a little bit. You are, and you're taking that in, and you're on the go constantly. And whatever it is that brought you to social work is kind of pushed down. And not even that, but like your day-to-day and your home life is kind of pushed down or pushed to the back. And when you leave social work, okay, and you're not emotionally giving all day long anymore, and you either switch careers to something completely not emotionally taxing anymore, or you retire maybe and you're just completely just chilling all day, all of a sudden you have all of this time to think about your own shit. And that's was something that I did not expect happening. All of a sudden, so I quit social work and I started working in staffing. I became a recruiter. And yeah, I'm doing great work and I'm helping people find jobs, but it's not the same. It's not the same kind of emotional turmoil that social work has. And I just remember that those first 6 months of leaving the field, initially it's like, oh my gosh, like you can't even believe the mental clarity and the mental cleanse that you go through. But then once that's kind of over, you realize how much of your day and how much of your time can now be spent thinking about your own stuff that you kind of have to prepare yourself for, because I was not prepared. I was not prepared to deal with all of the stuff that I had kind of been I'd been pushing back for years. And then when I quit social work and I didn't have other people's problems that I was constantly dealing with, I only had my own problems to deal with. And be prepared for how you're going to deal with that. Maybe you have no problems. I don't think so, because we all kind of have our own stuff. But that's something that I would definitely say to be prepared for. The fifth thing I think you should consider, and the last thing, and this one's a little more lighthearted, before you leave social work, is think about if you are completely switching careers, in the sense that you're no longer in the helping profession, like you're no longer a social worker, a teacher, a nurse, a cop, paramedic, you know, you're no longer kind of in that mindset of help, 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 give, give, give. Say you're going to a business, kind of like what I did. Think about how your mindset at work has to change. So for example, if you are leaving social work because you feel like you are too emotionally drained, it might not be the best decision to leave for another emotionally draining profession. It might not be the best decision to become a teacher, to become a nurse, to become a cop, because those are all emotionally draining things. Something to think about if you are like me and you're leaving social work to go kind of to the business sector is be prepared for a mental mind shift when it comes to how you think about work and your day-to-day. So in social work, you're very much thinking, okay, what's the best thing to do? What's best practice? What's the best thing to do for this person or whatever? Where in business, it's very much, where are our numbers at? And how are we looking for this quarter? And what's our competitor doing? And those are just things that I just was not really used to. And thinking about, you know, making money and being competitive and those kinds of things, which is fine. And I think I did the switch well. But if you're switching into something like that, just be ready for, you know, your work meetings are going to be different. They're not going to be emotionally charged. They're going to be numbers charged, and they're going to be more direct. Just something to keep in mind. So those are the 5 things that I think you need to know before leaving social work. Let me know your thoughts if that's something that was helpful for you guys. I plan on posting on this channel about once a week or so. Like this video if you liked it. Comment if you liked it. Subscribe if you liked it. Okay, that's it. Bye.